Commander Tae-jin stood on the bridge of the ESS Horizon, watching the massive space station grow larger on the view screen. Station Vara 9 was the biggest thing he had ever seen. It stretched across the darkness of space like a metal city, with thousands of ships docked at its ports. Some of those ships were 10 times bigger than his vessel. "We're being hailed, sir," said the communications officer. "Put them through," Tae-jin replied. A hologram appeared in the center of the bridge. The creature on the screen had 4 arms and skin that looked like blue glass. Its eyes were cold as it looked at the human commander. "You are the Earth delegation?" the alien asked. Its voice was filled with doubt. "Commander Tae-jin of Earth's 1st Expeditionary Force, reporting as ordered." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Proceed to Docking Bay 77. That is in the outer ring. Your ambassador will meet you there." The hologram vanished before Tae-jin could respond. Captain Hana walked up beside him. She was his tactical officer and had been with him since the Unification Wars back on Earth. "Outer ring means they're putting us with the cargo ships," she said quietly. "I noticed," Tae-jin said. "Let's not make trouble yet. We just got here." The horizon moved slowly toward the docking bay. Through the windows, Tae-jin could see other military ships. They were sleek and beautiful, covered in smooth armor that seemed to glow with energy. Their weapons were elegant. Everything about them looked advanced and clean. His ship looked like a metal box with guns welded to it. Because that's basically what it was. When they docked, Ambassador Suji was waiting for them. She was a small woman with gray hair, but her eyes were sharp. Behind her stood dozens of alien beings. Some had scales, some had fur, and some looked like they were made of crystal. All of them were staring at the humans. "Commander," Suji said with a slight bow. "Welcome to the Coalition." "Thank you, Ambassador." "What's the situation?" "Bad," she said. "The Vrexil swarm has destroyed 12 colonies in the past month. The Coalition is calling every member species to contribute military forces. We have to send troops or they'll think we're cowards." "How many species are here?" Tae-jin asked. 47 species are part of the Coalition. Earth makes 48. We're the newest members and by far the smallest. Lieutenant Ji-ho came down the loading ramp next, followed by Sergeant Mira and her infantry squad. Ji-ho was only 23 but was already the best pilot Tae-jin had ever seen. Mira was tough as steel and had the scars to prove it. Behind them came Corporal Dong-hyun and the medical team. The alien soldiers watched them with obvious amusement. One of them, a tall reptilian creature covered in green scales, actually laughed out loud. "These are the famous humans?" the creature said. "They look soft, like prey animals." Another alien, this one floating in the air with 6 tentacles, made a gurgling sound. "Look at their weapons. Are those chemical projectile launchers? My hatchlings have better toys." Mira's hand moved toward her rifle, but Tae-jin shook his head slightly. She stopped. "Ignore them," Suji whispered. "They don't understand what we're capable of." "Maybe that's good," Hana said. "Let them underestimate us." They were escorted through the station to the command center. The halls were massive, built for creatures much larger than humans. Everything was clean and white, with lights that seemed to come from nowhere. Alien soldiers passed them in the corridors, and every single one stopped to stare. The command center was a huge room with a holographic display in the middle. It showed star systems, ship positions, and the advancing Vrexil swarm. The swarm was represented by red dots, and there were thousands of them. Around the hologram stood the Coalition's military leaders. There was Admiral Velmoth, the 4-armed alien who had spoken to them earlier. Next to him was Commander Rixtal, a massive creature that looked like an upright lizard with armor plating. There were others too, representing different species. "The Earth delegation," Velmoth announced. Several of the aliens laughed. Tae-jin walked forward. "Commander Tae-jin reporting with 500 soldiers, 3 destroyers, and 12 fighter craft." 500 soldiers? Rixtal said. "I brought 10,000 from my world. Your contribution is minimal." "It's what we can spare," Tae-jin said calmly. "Let us begin," Velmoth said. "The Vrexil swarm is unlike anything we have faced before. They are a hive mind, controlled by central nodes. They consume everything organic and use the biomass to create more of themselves. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They only consume." The hologram changed to show a battle. Coalition ships fired beams of pure energy at the Vrexil. The Vrexil ships were organic, looking like giant insects made of bone and chitin. When they were hit, they broke apart but kept coming. We need a unified strategy, Velmoth continued. Each species will contribute their forces to battle groups. We will use standard coalition doctrine, shield walls, concentrated fire, and overwhelming force. Taejin studied the hologram. He had spent 20 years fighting in wars on Earth. He knew how battles worked. What he was seeing looked wrong. May I speak? He asked. Several aliens turned to look at him in surprise. Velmoth's eyes narrowed. You wish to address this council? I have some observations about the tactics being used. This human thinks he can teach us warfare? Rixtel said with a snort. What does Earth know of space combat? You have been in space for less than a century. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years, Taejin said. I see some problems with the current approach. Speak then, Velmoth said. He sounded amused. Taejin pointed at the hologram. The Vrexil are adapting to your tactics. They scatter when you form shield walls. They reform behind your lines. You're fighting them like you would fight an honorable opponent. But they're not honorable. They're predators. And what would you suggest? Velmoth asked. Unpredictability, ambushes, feints and traps. Make them afraid to engage. Attack their command structures. Use the terrain. Fight dirty. The room went silent. Then Rixtel started laughing. Fight dirty? This is warfare, not a street brawl. We are civilized species. We follow the codes of combat. The Vrexil don't care about your codes, Taejin said. Enough, Velmoth said. Your suggestions are noted. However, we will follow proven coalition doctrine. It has kept peace for 3,000 cycles. This isn't peace, Hana said quietly. This is extinction coming for you. Velmoth's expression darkened. You will take your forces to Sector 47. That is rearguard duty. You will defend the supply lines while the real military handles the Vrexil. Rearguard? Jiho blurted out. You're benching us? Consider it a learning opportunity, Rixatal said. Watch how real soldiers fight. Perhaps you will learn something. The meeting ended shortly after. As they walked back to their ships, Suji put her hand on Taejin's shoulder. I'm sorry, she said. I tried to warn them about underestimating us. It's fine, Taejin said. They'll learn. Everyone always does. What do you mean? She asked. Taejin looked back at the command center. Humans have a saying. People don't respect you until you punch them in the mouth. These aliens are about to get punched, Mira grinned. Can't wait. That night, Taejin stood alone on the observation deck of his ship. He could see the coalition fleet assembling. Hundreds of ships, all beautiful and powerful. They looked invincible, but he had seen invincible armies before. Back on Earth during the wars, they always had the same weakness. They believed too much in their own power. The Vrexil were coming. And when they did, the coalition was going to learn a hard lesson. They were about to discover what humans were really capable of. The alarm started screaming at 400 hours. Taejin was already awake when the call came through. Commander, the Vrexil are attacking Talus 4. The coalition fleet is engaging. He was on the bridge in less than 2 minutes. The view screen showed the distant flashes of weapons fire. Even from this far away, the battle looked massive. Get me a feed from the main fleet, he ordered. The screen changed. What Taejin saw made his stomach drop. The coalition had formed their shield wall just like they planned. Their ships were arranged in perfect formation, firing coordinated energy beams at the approaching Vrexil. It should have worked. The firepower was incredible, but the Vrexil weren't following the rules. The swarm ships scattered as they approached. They broke into hundreds of smaller groups, moving in unpredictable patterns. The coalition's targeting systems couldn't track them all. The Vrexil slipped through gaps in the shield wall like water through fingers. They're getting inside the formation, Hana said. She was watching her tactical screen with wide eyes. The coalition ships are too close together. They can't turn fast enough. On the screen, a Vrexil ship rammed directly into a coalition destroyer. The organic vessel exploded, but the damage was done. The destroyer's shields collapsed. Within seconds, dozens of smaller Vrexil craft swarmed over it like ants on sugar. Casualty reports are coming in, the communications officer said. 20 ships destroyed, 40 more damaged. The battle started 15 minutes ago. Taejin watched as another coalition ship exploded. The Vrexil were inside the formation now, tearing it apart from within. The perfect shield wall had become a death trap. Sir, Admiral Velmoth is hailing us, communications said. It's a general distress call. Put it through. Velmoth appeared on screen. His blue face was darker than before, and one of his arms hung limp. Behind him, his bridge was full of smoke. All ships, this is Admiral Velmoth. My flagship is boarded. Multiple Vrexil have breached the hull. We need immediate assistance. The transmission cut off, Commander. Hana asked. She was waiting for orders. Taijin didn't hesitate. Lieutenant Jiho, take your fighter squadron. We're going in. Hana, prepare boarding teams. Mira, get your soldiers ready. Sir, we don't have authorization, the communications officer said. I don't care. Move the fleet now. The Horizon and her sister ships broke formation. They accelerated toward the battle at full speed. On the command channel, the Coalition Fleet Coordinator was shouting at them to return to position. Taijin switched it off. Jiho, how long until you reach the Admiral's ship? He asked. The pilot's voice came through, crackling with excitement. 3 minutes. My squadron is right behind me. Good, clear us a path. The human fighters shot forward. They were smaller than the Coalition fighters and looked more primitive. But they moved differently. Jiho flew his craft like it was part of his body, rolling and spinning through the debris field. The Vrexil tried to track him but couldn't match his movements. These things fly like they're on rails, Jiho said over the comm. No creativity. I've got 2 on my tail. Watch this. He dove toward a piece of destroyed ship, pulled up at the last second, and the 2 Vrexil craft smashed into the debris. They exploded in bursts of green fire. Scratch 2, Jiho said. Path is clear. Sending you the docking coordinates. The Horizon shook as it took fire from a Vrexil ship. The shields held, but barely. Taijin gripped his chair as they approached the Admiral's flagship. Boarding teams go. Mira led her squad out of the airlock. They used magnetic boots to walk across the hull of the Admiral's ship, found a breach, and went inside. The human soldiers moved in pairs, covering each other as they advanced through the smoke-filled corridors. Inside the flagship, it was chaos. Vrexil warriors were everywhere. They looked like a nightmare combination of insect and skeleton, with 6 legs and blade-like arms. They moved fast and killed anything they touched. A group of Quarian soldiers were pinned down in a corridor. The aliens had energy rifles but were too scared to fight properly. They were trying to maintain a shield formation, but the Vrexil just went around them. Mira didn't hesitate. Grenades, now! Her squad threw 3 grenades down the corridor. The Quarian soldiers dove for cover, confused. They had never seen weapons like this. The grenades exploded with a roar, and 6 Vrexil warriors were torn apart by the blast. Move up, Mira shouted. Fire and advance. Don't let them surround you. The human soldiers moved forward in a coordinated rush. They fired short bursts, keeping their weapons steady. When a Vrexil got too close, they switched to combat knives and fought hand-to-hand. The Quarian soldiers watched in shock. These humans fought like wild animals, but with military precision. They didn't rely on shields. They didn't stand back and shoot. They charged forward and took the fight to the enemy. Dong Hyun, the medic, was running behind the advancing line. He found a Quarian officer bleeding on the floor. The alien's chest was torn open and blue blood was pooling around him. Stay still, Dong Hyun said. He pulled out his medical kit and went to work. His hands moved fast, applying pressure, injecting medicines, sealing wounds. The Quarian tried to push him away. Leave me. I am dying. Not today, you're not, Dong Hyun said. I didn't come all this way to watch people die. He kept working even as weapons fire echoed around them. Another human soldier stood over them, shooting at any Vrexil that got close. Further down the corridor, Mira came face to face with a Vrexil warrior. It was bigger than the others, with armor plating and larger blades. It looked at her with multiple black eyes and made a hissing sound. Mira pulled out her combat knife. The blade was only 20 centimeters long. The creature's arm blades were almost a meter. It should have been an easy kill for the Vrexil. Instead, Mira charged. The Vrexil swung its blade at her head. She ducked under it, rolled forward, and came up inside its guard. Her knife found a gap in its armor and drove deep. The creature screamed and tried to grab her, but she was already moving. She kicked its leg joint, making it stumble, then drove her knife into its head. The Vrexil fell. Mira pulled her knife out and kept moving. Behind her, a Quarian soldier stood frozen. He had just watched a human, smaller and weaker than the Vrexil, kill it in hand-to-hand combat. His species had developed energy weapons specifically to avoid close combat. The idea of fighting with knives seemed insane, but it worked. 20 minutes later, the flagship was secure. Admiral Velmoth stood on his damaged bridge looking at the human soldiers. They were covered in blood, some human, some Vrexil. Several were wounded but still standing. They didn't look like the soft creatures he had laughed at. They looked like predators. "You saved my ship," Velmoth said quietly. "You saved my life." Taejin had come aboard with the second wave. "That's what allies do, Admiral. I watched the security footage. Your soldiers fought the Vrexil in close combat. They used primitive weapons, explosives, knives. Why?" "Because it works," Taejin said simply. "The Vrexil expect long-range combat. They expect shields and energy weapons. They don't know what to do when someone gets close and starts stabbing." Velmoth looked at his damaged bridge. Nearly half his crew was dead. His beautiful ship was torn apart. The Coalition fleet had taken massive casualties, and a small group of humans had turned the tide. "Commander Rixtal called you primitive," Velmoth said. He was wrong. "You are not primitive. You are something much more dangerous. You are apex predators who learn to organize." Taejin didn't argue. "The Vrexil are still out there, Admiral. This was just the first wave. We need to change our tactics." "Change?" Velmoth asked. "To what?" "To winning," Taejin said. "Let us show you how humans fight wars." The Admiral looked at him for a long moment. Then he slowly nodded. The Coalition had laughed at Earth's army. After today, nobody was laughing anymore. The Emergency Council met 2 days after the disaster at Talos 4. The Coalition had lost 70 ships and over 20,000 soldiers. It was the worst defeat in their 3,000-year history. The council chamber was huge, with seats arranged in circles for each species. At the center stood a holographic display showing the current military situation. It looked bad. The Vrexil had taken 4 more mining colonies and were pushing deeper into Coalition space. Taejin stood with Ambassador Suji in the human section. They were in the outer ring, far from the important seats. That was normal. Earth was new and small. Nobody expected them to speak at these meetings, but Admiral Velmoth surprised everyone. "I request that Commander Taejin of Earth be given voice in this council," the Admiral said. His 4 arms gestured at Taejin. "His tactics saved my flagship and my life. We should hear what he has to say." The chamber went silent. Commander Rixtal stood up from his seat. The massive reptilian looked angry. "You want to give voice to a human? They have been in space for barely a century. What can they possibly teach us?" "How to survive," Velmoth said quietly. "Which is more than we are doing now." The vote was called. It took an hour of arguing, but finally, Taejin was allowed to speak. He walked to the center platform, feeling all those alien eyes watching him. "Thank you for this opportunity," he began. "I have studied your military tactics. They are impressive. You have technology we can only dream about. Your weapons are powerful. Your ships are beautiful. But you are losing this war." "Careful, human," Rixtal growled. "The Vrexil are not fighting a civilized war." Taejin continued. "They do not follow your codes of honor. They do not form nice battle lines. They are predators, and they hunt the way predators hunt. They look for weakness. They scatter and reform. They attack from unexpected angles. You cannot beat them by following rules they do not respect." "What do you suggest?" asked a delegate from the Lumerian species. Her voice was musical and sad. Taejin activated the holographic display. "We need to restructure the entire fleet. No more massive formations. Break into smaller groups that can respond quickly. Use ambushes. Set traps. Attack their command nodes, not just their drones. Make them afraid to engage us." "This is dishonorable," Rixtal said. "We do not ambush our enemies. We do not set traps like cowards." Hana, who had come with Taejin, spoke up. "Honor won't matter when you're dead and your worlds are consumed. We'll do what works, not what looks good." "She is right," Velmoth said. "I have lost too many good soldiers following doctrine that does not work. Perhaps it is time to try something new." The council debated for hours. Finally, they reached a compromise. 3 mixed species task forces would be created. Each would have human advisors who would teach Coalition soldiers the human way of war. If these task forces succeeded, the entire fleet would adopt the new tactics. If they failed, Earth would be expelled from the Coalition for wasting everyone's time. The training began the next day. Jiho took a squadron of 12 alien pilots to a training zone near a dead moon. The pilots came from 6 different species. All of them had more experience than him. All of them thought this was a waste of time. "Listen up," Jiho said over the comm channel. "I'm going to teach you how to fly like a human. That means forgetting everything you know about proper flight patterns." "This is insulting," said one of the pilots, a Scalix named Keth. His species had been flying in space for 2,000 years. I have flown 300 combat missions. Great, Jiho said. Then you should pick this up fast. Follow me. He dove his fighter toward the moon's surface. The other pilots followed, maintaining a perfect formation. Jiho went lower, skimming just meters above the rocky ground. He flew between two mountains, rolled sideways to fit through a narrow canyon, then pulled up hard. The other pilots tried to follow. Two of them crashed into the rocks. Their shields saved them, but their fighters were damaged. The rest pulled up early, refusing to fly that low. What was that? Keth demanded. You nearly killed us. I flew through it just fine, Jiho said. The problem is you're flying like you're in open space. You're predictable. The Vrexil tracking systems can predict where you'll be in the next 3 seconds. But if you fly like this... He dove again, this time spinning his fighter in random directions. They can't lock on. You become impossible to hit. This is insane, another pilot said. No, Jiho replied. This is survival. The Vrexil fly on rails. They follow computer-calculated paths. But humans learn to fly in atmospheres with wind and weather and gravity. We learn to be unpredictable. Now I'm teaching you the same thing. It took 3 days, but slowly the alien pilots began to understand. Keth was the first to get it. He stopped flying in straight lines and started treating his fighter like it was a living thing. By the end of the week, he could follow Jiho through the canyons without crashing. Meanwhile, Mira was training infantry. She had 200 soldiers from a dozen species. Most of them carried energy rifles and relied on personal shields. They stood in neat formations and fired from static positions. This is wrong, Mira said on the first day. You're making yourselves easy targets. Watch. She had her human soldiers demonstrate. They moved in pairs, one firing while the other advanced. They used cover. They threw grenades to flush enemies out of hiding. When they got close, they switched to knives and fought in close quarters. One of the Quarian soldiers, Talvin, watched with interest. He had been on the flagship when the humans rescued it. He had seen what they could do. Why do you fight so aggressively? He asked Mira. Our doctrine teaches us to maintain distance and use superior firepower. Because distance doesn't always work, Mira said. What happens when the enemy gets past your shields? What happens when they close to melee range? We retreat and reform our line. And while you're retreating, they're killing you, Mira said. We teach our soldiers to fight at every range. Long, medium, short, and hand-to-hand. That way we're never helpless. She handed him a combat knife. Try to attack me. Talvin hesitated. He was twice her size and much stronger. I do not wish to hurt you. You won't, Mira said with a grin. The Quarian charged. Mira sidestepped, grabbed his arm, used his momentum against him, and threw him to the ground. The knife was at his throat before he could react, you see? She said, helping him up. Size doesn't matter as much as technique. The Vrexil are bigger and stronger than humans, but we learned how to fight things bigger than us. We've been doing it for thousands of years, Talvin rubbed his neck where the knife had been. Teach me, he said. Captain Hana worked with the tactical officers, teaching them about guerrilla warfare, false flag operations, and psychological tactics. Most of the aliens found these concepts disturbing. You want us to trick the enemy? One officer asked. To lie to them? It's not lying, Hana said. It's tactics. You make them think you're attacking from the north, then hit them from the south. You fake a retreat to draw them into a trap. You make them afraid to advance because they don't know what you'll do next. This seems dishonorable. Honor is a luxury, Hana said. You can have honor or you can have victory. Pick one. While the training continued, Donghyun worked with the medical teams. Coalition medicine was advanced, but their medics didn't go into combat. They stayed safe in medical bays while the wounded were brought to them. That's too slow, Donghyun said. Soldiers die from injuries that could be treated if someone helped them immediately. That's why human medics go to the front lines. He taught them battlefield medicine, how to treat injuries with limited supplies, how to perform emergency surgery under fire. The alien medics were shocked by how aggressive human medicine was. You cut into patients with knives? One asked in horror. When we have to, Donghyun said. Sometimes you can't wait for proper tools. Sometimes you have to make do with what you have. On Earth, we have a saying, any landing you can walk away from is a good landing. Same with medicine. Any patient who survives is a success. 3 weeks passed. The mixed task forces trained together every day. Slowly, the alien soldiers began to adopt human tactics. They learned to move unpredictably. They learned to fight at close range. They learned to set traps and ambushes. More importantly, they learned to trust their human advisors. During one training exercise, Keth's fighter was shot down by simulated Vrexil fire. Jiho immediately broke formation to rescue him, drawing simulated fire to himself. After the exercise, Keth approached Jiho. "You risked yourself for me." "Why, because you're my wingman," Jiho said simply. "That's what we do." Keth made a gesture of respect with his clawed hands. "I mocked your species when you first arrived. I was wrong. I would be honored to fly into battle beside you." Intelligence reports came in. The Vrexil were gathering near a dead moon called Kepler-7. It looked like they were building a staging ground for a major attack. Admiral Velmoth called Tae-Jin to the command center. "Your task forces are ready. It is time to put your training to the test. Can you destroy the Vrexil base at Kepler-7? Tae-Jin looked at the tactical display. It would be dangerous. They would be outnumbered. But they had something the Vrexil didn't expect. They had humans. And humans were very good at impossible missions. "We'll get it done," Tae-Jin said. The moon Kepler-7 hung in space like a gray skull. It was dead and cold, with deep canyons cutting across its surface. Sensors showed thousands of Vrexil signatures. They were building something big. Tae-Jin stood in the briefing room with his task force commanders. Hana was there, along with Mira, Jiho, and Dong-hyun. With them were their alien counterparts, Velmoth, Keth, Talvin, and a dozen others. "This is Operation Crimson Dawn," Tae-Jin said, activating the holographic display. "Intelligence says the Vrexil are staging here for a major push into coalition core systems. If we let them finish building, they'll have enough forces to overwhelm our defenses." "How many Vrexil?" Velmoth asked. "At least 10,000 drones, maybe more, plus command nodes coordinating them." The room went quiet. That was a huge number. The task force only had 800 soldiers. "We cannot win a direct assault," Talvin said. "Good thing we're not doing a direct assault," Hana said. She manipulated the display. "We're going to make them think we are. Jiho, your squadron will plant seismic charges here, here, and here." She pointed to the northern canyons. "When they detonate, the Vrexil will think a large force is attacking from the north. While they move to defend the north," Tae-Jin continued, "our real strike teams hit from the south. We go for the command nodes, kill their coordination, and the drones become disorganized." "A feint," Velmoth said with understanding. "Humans are fond of deception. Humans are fond of winning," Mira said. "What about extraction?" Keth asked. "Once we destroy the nodes, the Vrexil will come for us in force. We'll be long gone by then," Jiho said with a grin. "In and out before they know what hit them." The plan was risky. Everyone knew it. But they had trained for this. They were ready. The task force launched at midnight station time. Jiho led his fighter squadron toward Kepler-7, flying low and fast. Keth was on his wing, along with 10 other pilots from various species. They had learned to fly like humans now, unpredictable and aggressive. Entering the canyon system, Jiho reported, going silent. They dropped their engines to minimal power and glided between the rock walls. The canyons were narrow, barely wider than their fighters. One wrong move and they would crash into the walls. "This is insane," one of the pilots whispered. "Quiet," Keth said. "Focus on flying." They reached the northern zone and deployed the seismic charges. The devices were simple but effective. They would create vibrations that looked like a large military force moving through the area. "Charges set," Jiho reported, heading to extraction point. As they flew out, 2 Vrexil patrol ships spotted them. The enemy craft opened fire. Jiho rolled his fighter sideways, the energy beams missing by centimeters. "I've got 2 on me," one pilot called out. "I'm coming," Keth responded. He pushed his fighter to maximum speed, came up behind the Vrexil ships and fired. One exploded. The other tried to evade, but Keth stayed on it, matching every move. A second burst of fire and it was destroyed too. "Thanks," the pilot said. "That is what wingmen do," Keth replied, echoing Jiho's words from training. They lost 1 fighter before reaching safety, but the charges were in place. That was what mattered. On the ground, Mira led the strike teams toward the southern approach. They moved on foot, using the terrain for cover. The Vrexil had patrols, but the teams avoided them or silently eliminated them. Talvin moved beside Mira. The Quarian had learned well. He no longer stood up straight and relied on his shield. He crouched, moved quickly from cover to cover, and kept his weapon ready. Command node ahead, Mira whispered. 200 meters. The node was a massive organic structure that looked like a building made of bone. Vrexil drones moved around it in patterns like ants around their nest. Wait for the signal, Mira said. Far to the north, the seismic charges detonated. The ground shook. Alarms started screaming from the Vrexil base. Thousands of drones began moving north, responding to what they thought was a major attack. Now, Mira shouted. Hit them! The strike teams opened fire. Grenades flew through the air, exploding among the remaining Vrexil. The humans and their alien partners rushed forward, firing as they moved. They reached the command node in less than a minute. Plant the charges, Hana ordered. She was with the second team, hitting another node 3 kilometers away. We have 5 minutes before they realize it's a trap. Donghyun was with the third team. They encountered heavier resistance. A Vrexil warrior drone, bigger than the others, charged at them. It killed 2 soldiers before Donghyun could react. He grabbed his rifle and fired, but the bullets just bounced off its armor. Somebody kill that thing, someone screamed. Talvin stepped forward. He had learned human tactics. Instead of shooting, he threw a grenade at the creature's feet. The explosion staggered it. While it was off balance, Talvin charged with his combat knife and drove it into a weak point in the armor. The creature fell. I am learning, Talvin said, helping Donghyun up. You're doing great, the medic replied. Now help me with these wounded. The charges were set at all 3 command nodes. Taejin gave the order to detonate. 3 massive explosions lit up the moon's surface. The command nodes were destroyed. Immediately, the Vrexil drones became confused. Without the nodes coordinating them, they started attacking randomly, sometimes even fighting each other. Teams fall back to extraction points, Taejin ordered, but there was a problem. The 4th command node, one they hadn't known about, suddenly activated. It was deeper underground and it was releasing something big. Commander, we have a new contact, the sensor operator said. It's huge, much larger than the warrior drones. On the screen, a massive creature emerged from the ground. It looked like a Vrexil but was 10 times larger, with thick armor plating and multiple weapon systems. It was intelligent too. Its eyes focused on Taejin's position with obvious malice. That's a queen form, Velmoth said with fear. I have only heard of them in old reports. They command entire regions of the swarm. Can we kill it? Taejin asked. I do not know. No one has killed one before. There's a first time for everything, Taejin said. All teams converge on my position. We're taking that thing down. The teams fought their way toward the queen. She was destroying everything in her path, even her own drones. She seemed to understand that the humans had tricked her and she was furious. Taejin ran toward her position. It was stupid. Probably suicidal, but someone had to get close. Behind him, his soldiers were yelling at him to stop. The queen saw him. She made a sound like grinding metal and spoke. Her voice came through their communication system somehow. You are chaos. You do not fight with order. We fight to win, Taejin replied. Order is a luxury. He ran toward a building that his engineers had rigged with explosives. The queen followed, crushing everything in her path. She was faster than she looked. Taejin barely made it inside before she reached him. Now, he shouted. The building exploded. Shaped charges detonated in sequence, bringing tons of rock down on the queen. She screamed, a sound that made everyone's ears hurt. Then the ground collapsed and she fell into a deep crevasse. More rock fell on top of her, burying her completely. Silence. Is she dead? Someone asked. I don't know, Taejin said, climbing out of the rubble. And I don't want to wait around to find out. Everyone to the ships, now. The teams ran for the extraction points. Vrexil drones were everywhere, confused and angry. The soldiers fought their way through, losing people with each passing minute. Jiho brought his fighters in low, providing cover fire. Hurry up! We've got more Vrexil incoming from space. Looks like reinforcements. Mira was carrying a wounded soldier on her back. Talvin was beside her, firing behind them to keep the drones away. Donghyun was treating wounded soldiers as they ran, which should have been impossible, but he managed it anyway. They made it to the dropships with minutes to spare. The ships lifted off just as a wave of fresh Vrexil forces arrived. Jiho's squadron held them off long enough for the dropships to escape. Jump to hyperspace, Taejin ordered. Get us out of here. The ships jumped away. Behind them, Kepler 7 was in chaos. The command nodes were destroyed. A queen was buried. The Vrexil staging ground was crippled. The mission was a success, but it cost them. They lost 30 soldiers out of 800. For the Coalition, who rarely lost anyone, it seemed like a disaster. But for the humans, who had seen far worse, it was a victory. Admiral Velmoth watched the footage of the battle. He saw human and alien soldiers fighting side by side. He saw them using tactics that no one had taught in military academies. He saw them win against impossible odds. "Send this footage to every ship in the fleet," he ordered. "Everyone needs to see this." The video spread through the Coalition military. Soldiers who had laughed at the humans now watched in silence. They saw what was possible when you stopped following the old rules and started fighting to win. The war was far from over, but now they had hope. 6 weeks after Kepler-7, the war had changed. Coalition forces were winning. They used human tactics now, fighting smart instead of just fighting hard. The Vrexil were being pushed back system by system, but the swarm was not beaten. Intelligence finally discovered why. There was an overmind, a central consciousness controlling everything. It hid in an ancient structure called the Tomb of Architects, protected by millions of drones. Taejin studied the scans of the tomb. It was massive, bigger than any station he had ever seen. It was also old, built by some ancient civilization that had disappeared long ago. The Vrexil had taken it over and made it their fortress. "We could siege it," Velmoth suggested. "Surround it and cut off their supplies." "That would take years," Hana said. "And millions more will die while we wait. We need to strike at the heart. Kill the Overmind and the entire swarm collapses." "How?" Velmoth asked. "We would need to get through millions of Vrexil to reach it." "A small team," Taejin said. "Fast insertion while the main fleet keeps them busy. Get to the Overmind and destroy it before they can react." "A suicide mission," Talvin said. He had been promoted after Kepler-7 and now served as Taejin's second in command. "The probability of survival is very low. 4%, the tactical computer confirmed." "Then we need volunteers," Taejin said. "I'm going. Anyone who wants to join me can step forward. But I won't order anyone to come." Every human in the room stepped forward immediately, but so did others. Talvin moved to stand beside Taejin. Keth joined them. Then more aliens came forward. Quarians, Scalix, Lemurians, even species that were normally peaceful. In the end, 200 soldiers volunteered. 12 different species all ready to die together. "This is foolish," Commander Rixtal said. He had finally acknowledged human capabilities, but he still thought this mission was too dangerous. "You are throwing away our best soldiers." "If we don't do this, everyone dies anyway," Mira said. "At least this way we're going down fighting." They had 72 hours to prepare. Hana selected the best fighters from each species. Mira drilled them constantly, making sure they could work together. Jiho planned the flight path, finding a narrow corridor through the tomb's defenses. Donghyun prepared medical supplies, though everyone knew they probably wouldn't matter. On the last night, Taejin couldn't sleep. He walked through the ship and found Ambassador Suji looking out at the stars. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "You've already proven everything Earth needed to prove. The Coalition respects us now." "This isn't about respect," Taejin said. "It's about finishing what we started. The Vrexil want to consume everything. We have to stop them. You might not come back." "I know." She put her hand on his shoulder. "Then make it count." The fleet assembled for the final battle. It was the largest gathering of ships in Coalition history. Every species contributed everything they had. The space around the Tomb of Architects filled with thousands of vessels. Admiral Velmoth gave the order to attack. The fleet surged forward, and the Vrexil responded with overwhelming force. Millions of drones poured out of the tomb. The battle became a storm of weapons fire and explosions. While the main fleet fought, Jiho's transport wing moved toward the tomb. There were 20 transports carrying the 200 volunteers. They flew through the chaos, dodging fire from both sides, or taking heavy damage. One pilot called out. An explosion destroyed his ship. 19 transports left. "Keep going," Jiho ordered. "Don't stop for anything." They lost more ships with each passing second. The Vrexil targeting systems focused on them, realizing they were heading for the tomb itself. By the time they reached the structure, only 9 transports remained. They crashed through the outer hull and landed inside a massive chamber. The soldiers poured out, ready for battle. Vrexil warriors were already waiting for them. The fighting was immediate and brutal. Mira led her squad forward, using grenades to clear the corridor. Talvin fought beside her, his combat knife flashing. They had lost so many already, but they kept moving. The overmind is 3 kilometers down, Hana shouted. We need to keep moving. The Vrexil threw everything at them. Warrior drones attacked in waves. The walls opened and more enemies poured out. Donghyun worked constantly, treating wounded soldiers even as the fighting continued around him. They fought their way deeper into the tomb. The structure was like a nightmare maze, with corridors that seemed to go on forever. Every chamber was defended. Every meter cost blood. After an hour, only 90 soldiers remained alive. This is death ground, Mira said to her mixed squad. There's no retreat, no surrender. We win or we die here, so let's make them pay for every step. Her soldiers, human and alien alike, roared their agreement. They reached a massive chamber. The overmind was there, a grotesque fusion of organic and machine. It was enormous, filling the entire space with tendrils reaching in every direction. It pulsed with a sick green light. It spoke, its voice echoing in their minds. You are persistent. Like bacteria. I offer terms. Leave now. I will spare your worlds. This war ends. We don't negotiate with things that want to eat us, Taejin said. He started priming the Nova bomb they had brought. It was a weapon of last resort, powerful enough to destroy the entire structure. The overmind screamed and released its guards. Massive Vrexil warriors, even bigger than the queen they had fought before, emerged from the walls. The final battle began. Mira fought like a demon, protecting the soldiers arming the bomb. She killed dozens of Vrexil, but there were too many. A warrior's blade caught her in the chest. She fell, still firing her rifle until the end. Donghyun tried to save her, but a Vrexil grabbed him. He fought back with his knife, saving 3 wounded soldiers before he died. Jiho had stayed with his crashed transport to provide covering fire. When a wave of Vrexil tried to flank the main force, he crashed his ship directly into them, detonating the fuel tanks. The explosion took out dozens of enemies. One by one, the soldiers fell, but they kept fighting. They held the line so Taejin could finish arming the bomb. Bomb is ready, Taejin shouted. Everyone fall back. We have 90 seconds. Only 11 soldiers remained alive. They ran for the extraction point, 3 kilometers through collapsing corridors. Talvin was wounded, so Taejin carried him. Hana provided covering fire, killing any Vrexil that got close. They reached the last dropship with 10 seconds to spare. 7 soldiers made it on board. The others died protecting the retreat. The ship launched just as the Nova bomb detonated. The explosion was like a newborn star. The tomb of architects collapsed in on itself, creating a brief singularity. The overmind's death scream echoed across every psychic frequency in the galaxy, and then silence. The Vrexil swarm stopped. Without the overmind coordinating them, the drones began fighting each other. Within hours, the threat was over. The war was won, but the cost was terrible. Of the 200 volunteers, only 7 survived. Of the 20 ships, only 1 escaped. Humanity lost 15 of their 20 volunteers, including some of their best soldiers. 1 month later, the Coalition held a memorial service. The names of all the fallen were carved into a massive wall at Coalition command. Human names and alien names side by side, united in sacrifice. Admiral Velmoth stood before the gathered fleet and spoke. When Earth joined our coalition, we saw them as primitive. We laughed at their weapons. We mocked their tactics. We were fools. They taught us that warfare is not about technology or tradition. It is about will. About refusing to surrender when every logical calculation says you should. The humans showed us what it means to fight for survival. They taught us to adapt, to be unpredictable, to never give up. We will never forget this lesson. We will never forget their sacrifice. Commander Taejin, now promoted to admiral, stood and addressed the council. Humanity did not win this war for you. We won it with you. Every species here bled. Every species learned. The Vrexil came to destroy us, but instead they united us. We are stronger together than we ever were divided. That is their legacy. The council unanimously voted to reform the coalition military. Human tactics were integrated into every level of training. Mixed species units became standard. The rigid doctrines of the past were replaced with adaptable strategies. Earth was no longer the junior member. They were respected equals. 3 years later, Captain Hana visited the memorial wall. She touched the names carved there: Jiho, Mira, Donghyun, and dozens of others. So many friends lost, a young Scalix officer approached. It was Keth's son wearing his father's medals. Keth had survived the war but died peacefully 2 years later. Captain, I wanted to thank you. My father told me stories about humans, about how you saved the galaxy. Hana shook her head. We didn't save the galaxy. We reminded it how to save itself. There's a difference. She walked away, leaving the young officer staring at the memorial wall. Human and alien names intertwined, bound by blood and sacrifice. The galaxy had learned its lesson. They would never underestimate humanity again, but more importantly, they had learned that strength came not from technology or tradition, but from the will to endure when everything seemed hopeless. The coalition stood united now, ready for whatever challenges came next. And at the heart of that unity were the lessons learned from a species that everyone had laughed at.